Diego Pavia returns to Jordan-Hare Stadium. What does that mean for Vandy?
Bowl game.
Ooh, and the Auburn Tide.
You are Locked On Vandy, your daily podcast on the Vanderbilt Commodores, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into a special crossover edition of Locked On Auburn and Locked On Vandy. That is Corey Burton, the host of Locked On Vandy. I am the host of Locked On Auburn, Zach Blackerby, and thank you so much for making us your first listen every single day. Man, I think we all kind of went into this season circling the games that are important, and this one seems more important than I ever thought it would be, Corey, as Auburn and Vandy square off on Saturday.
Well, Vandy's been circling this game. I think they circled it preseason for a bunch of reasons. Pavia returning to Jordan-Hare Stadium. That's one. And then, of course, this was likely the game if Vandy was going to become bowl eligible, that this was going to be the game. This was going to be a key game in that venture. So, yeah.
I mean, I think Pavia returning to Jordan-Hare Stadium is the most intriguing thing just because Pavia – I mean, he's kind of had Hugh Freeze's number. The two times that he's played him, Pavia has been able to have a pretty prolific appearance. It's like, what does that mean? Like, can he do it 3 times in a row? Surely he's not sneaking up on Auburn this time. But, man, the guy has been electric every step of the way this season. Does seem to be better at home than away. I think Auburn has the defense to stop him. But you could have said that a year ago as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of it has to do with scheme and the way Vandy's able to put guys in space and force defenders to play in space and tackle in the open field, which surprisingly, Alabama struggled with it. Kentucky struggled with it. Missouri struggled with it for the most part. They were able to get it together and hit some big plays to turn that game in their favor. Yeah. Then Virginia Tech struggled with it. And of course, Alcorn State struggles everything, but Georgia State, that wasn't a game. I just thought that was a weird game for Vandy. So I kind of throw that one out because there was a whole lot of other things at play with the mindset and things. But for the most part, man, this scheme has really, really helped Diego Pavia. He's banged up though. That's the thing I worry about. He's taken a few knocks starting from the Kentucky game, rolling into the Texas.
Wasn't he banged up going into the Auburn game last year? I know you didn't cover New Mexico State last year, but I remember that kind of being one of the storylines of like, oh, their quarterback's even banged up. But then he came out there and just balled out. So, I mean, This dude is tough.
He's a gamer. He's a tough kid. Wrestler. Yeah. He was a high school wrestler. Just kind of had a tough road to Vandy. He even had a tough road to get to New Mexico State. Sure. Had to beat out Eli Stowers in the preseason to even win the job, for him to even get a chance to beat Auburn. So everything he's done, he's had to compete at the highest level just to achieve what he wants to achieve to this point.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you think Vandy's going to do anything different? I mean, a lot of what they do, Hugh Freeze earlier this week compared the offense to Navy schematically. It looks different, but they're doing the same thing as far as, putting a lot of pressure on edge defenders and making them make decisions and playing things off of that. Do you think with him being banged up, they have to modify that a little bit? Is that going to alter the game plan against this Auburn defense that seems to be getting better over the course of the season? Or is this a thing where it's like, Pavia's tough, he'll power through it? Yeah. What do you see that offensive game plan looking like for Vandy?
Well, they're going to have to add to it anyway. They're going to have to evolve it regardless of whether Pavia is banged up or not. Sure. You saw against Texas where they started towards the end of the game, starting to hit passes. But they're going to have to do things because teams are like, the way to play Vandy is to force Pavia to stay in the pocket to throw. And that's where he struggles the most, ironically. And if they can do that, then they have a good chance of stopping that offense. But Pavia and Tim Beck and Jerry Kill, they have to figure out how Pavia can beat teams enough, not primarily. Like if he sits back and throws it 30 times, Vandy's probably in trouble. But they have to find ways to find receivers. They need receivers to step up. They need more than just Quincy Skinner. You'll see a lot of 20 personnel, 21 personnel, maybe even 22 personnel with Newberry, Alexander, Spence, and Stowers. They just got to find a way to push the ball downfield a little bit to relieve some of that pressure. And then Pavia can stretch things out horizontally, find some creases, and go.
Yeah. Since we're talking about, when Vandy has the football, one of the internal storylines for Auburn this season has been, man, this freshman class is so good. Mm-hmm. And after Auburn dropped a few games that we didn't feel like we should have earlier this season, it's like, okay, well, let's just play the young guys to get ready for next year. And Corey, they have been so good. These freshmen for Auburn have been so good. I mean, Jay Crawford, the corner, sounds like it's going to be an important part of this if Vandy wants to throw it more. Caleb Harris at safety has been phenomenal. DeMarcus Riddick at linebacker. Malik Blockton at defensive line. Amaris Williams is getting more reps at the end. Like, these freshmen have been so good for Auburn. And so, I mean, to me, I think that's going to be a big key to this is like, can they keep this upward trajectory going like we saw them do at Kentucky last week? And if they play like they did last week at Kentucky, I think Auburn wins this football game. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Auburn completely shut down Kentucky, which, I mean, no offense to Kentucky, that wasn't much shut down. But yeah, with freshmen, you're going to have against an option attack. I think that's the key because freshmen are freshmen, right? And they make freshman errors. You force them in a decision in a pressure situation, like this game will be in space. They have to make split-second decisions, and that's sometimes problematic. And that's where this offense really can kind of prey on younger defenses. But I said in my episode that posted this morning, it's going to be trench warfare. And it's going to come down to, on both sides of the ball, it's going to come down to Vandy's offensive line taking care of the interior of the defense and forcing those guys into forcing those guys to get off blocks and really run to the edges to stop Pavia and to stop Alexander, to stop Stowers or whoever it is getting to the edge. And I think Vandy's going to have to establish a little bit of an inside run. And I think if they can get some things going to the outside a little bit, I think that's going to mess with the defense as far as getting them to pursue. And once they pursue, you saw them against Texas. They were able to hit some things back up against the grain with Alexander right through the A gap. Yeah. And they can kind of, and as drive starters too, which is even crazier because Texas is super talented on the interior of their defensive line. And Vandy was able to get some good drives started with 6, 7, 8 yard gains. So who do you think has the edge in this one when it comes to the trenches? Because I think I like Auburn in this. Where are you on it? I mean, Auburn's certainly formidable, but like scheme wise, I think if you're looking at roster to roster, yes, Auburn does have the advantage. Most rosters have the advantage over Vanderbilt, but the great equalizer is the scheme because you're not blocking certain people and you're letting certain people run and take themselves out of the play. So I think with scheme and the way that Tim Beck and Jerry Kill are able to adjust on the fly with what how a defense is attacking, I think that gives the advantage to Vandy in that situation. But sheer talent versus talent, Auburn's defensive line is pretty scary, and they're scary good, and I have a lot of respect for their defensive line. But they're going to have to show me that they can play more disciplined against this option attack because they haven't done it yet. Not saying that they can't, they just haven't had the reps to do it yet because y'all haven't played a team like Vandy. Yeah, and containment is important, and that's something they struggled with earlier this season. That seems to have gotten better over the course of the year. But I mean, there's some stuff in the midline too, like midline option, power read, like stuff that focuses on the defensive tackles. Good point. Getting combos up to the linebackers. Like there's things on the interior too that can hurt them just by formation, looks, motions, and then reading interior defenders too. Yeah, heavy option teams. If you're not used to it, it's tough to. Sometimes it's tough to prep for that all in a week. So we'll certainly see what that looks like. Hey, the line that our friends at FanDuel have put out for this game, it surprised a ton of people, Corey. And we both give our thoughts on that in just a moment. Right here on this crossover edition of Locked on Auburn and Locked on Vandy. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at 5 Hour Energy. We all love 5 Hour Energy, Corey. I don't think there's any question about it. Our friends at 5 Hour Energy, they know that being a passionate football fan isn't just a hobby. It's a way of life, and it takes a lot of energy and a lot of power to get up for game day. To me, like, let's talk about, like, okay, what's a 5 Hour Energy moment from Vandy's season so far this year. And I really just want you to highlight that y'all beat Alabama. That's really what I want you to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, that's the 5-hour energy. Beating Alabama and having the energy post-game to rip down the goalpost and take it to the Cumberland River 3 miles through downtown.
Yep.
That's a 5-hour energy moment right there in and of itself.
Yeah, I think Auburn folks were just as excited as Vandy fans were. So 5-hour energy knows that no matter what team you root for, being a fan requires heart, soul, and a whole lot of energy. Whether you're prepping for the big tailgate or ironing your jersey, your game day to-do list is always a mile long. That's why the unlimited edition Stand the Fan 5-hour energy shot is here to help you stay fueled throughout the season. Available at 5hourenergy.com and, of course, shipped nationwide. Thank you so much for making this crossover edition of Locked on Auburn or Locked on Vandy your first listen every single day. Yeah, FanDuel rolls out the line Sunday morning. Auburn a 6.5-point favorite, pretty much a touchdown favorite over Vandy. This surprised a lot of folks. And I mean, it's not like Vandy played Texas and got whooped. I mean, it came down to the wire, Corey. And you know, Auburn went up to Kentucky and took care of business. But I mean, Kentucky is Kentucky at this point. When you saw this line for the first time, what went through your brain?
Jordan, they're giving a lot of respect to Jordan-Hare Stadium is what went through my mind. I was like, okay. I was thinking like Jordan-Hare Stadium is worth a touchdown, especially against Vandy. Even if the two teams are playing well, and they are at this point, you combine that with a loss, and they feel like Jarquez Hunter's 278-yard performance is enough to push that line out. I was expecting 4.5 to 3.5, somewhere in that ballpark. But that environment at Jordan-Hare, and I've been there several times. Yeah, it's amazing. Like
it's great. It's a great place for sure. Yeah, I said 2.5 when I went live after the game. I said 2.5, and I actually added the caveat and I don't know who's going to be favored. I mean, the Jarquez Hunter explosive performance. How do you think that impacts Saturday? I mean, obviously, if you're preparing for Auburn, you want to stop the run. I think most teams are okay with kind of rolling the dice and say, hey, Peyton Thorne, you got to beat us.
Yeah.
How does Vandy stop Jarquez in your mind?
They've just got to get super aggressive blitzing wise. They can't do this drop 8 stuff and bring minimal pressure. They're going to have to run blitz, especially on early downs. They're going to have to stop him before he can really get going. Yeah. And I think teams have been successful in stopping him that way by hitting him in the backfield, clogging up run lanes to force him to stop his momentum and cut one way or the other. Just getting things to where it's either bogged down or you're getting shots on him in the backfield. Yeah.
Yeah. And obviously that's easier said than done. Missouri was able to do it. They kind of upped his touches against Missouri. I think he had 21 total touches, 19 carries, 2 catches against Missouri. But then against Kentucky, I mean, we've seen Kentucky's defense, I mean, shut down Georgia, shut down Ole Miss. I mean, this has been a team that's been kind of hot and cold. And so I was a little surprised going into that. I said, Auburn's not going to be able to run the ball against them. They're going to have to beat them through the air. And clearly that wasn't true. So.
Yeah, they have fallen apart, man. Like I think the loss to Vandy kind of broke them a little bit. And I think there's just a lot of lack of confidence there at Kentucky. And, you know, you get a player like Jarquez Hunter who can take a game and run with it, pun intended. And that's exactly what happened. You get a team that's got some broken confidence, and you get a guy like Jarquez Hunter, you give him a little bit of daylight, boom, it's gone. And then Jarquez Hunter's feeling good about himself, and, you know, it's over.
Yeah, I mean, you know both of these teams pretty well, Corey. If Jarquez Hunter, if I told you Jarquez Hunter was limited to 70 yards on Saturday, does Auburn have a shot in your mind?
No.
Okay.
I don't think so. And I don't think so. Because the yards and the points and the production is going to have to come from somewhere. If Jarquez Hunter only had 70 yards, I would say that Peyton Thorne or somebody on the offense has turned it over 4 times. I would say that something terribly bad happened in special teams. And I would say that Vandy got jumped ahead early and the game plan went right out the window, because you got to feed Jarquez Hunter early and often. He's the guy. And
another element that I think could help or could hurt Jarquez's potential production is Vandy holds onto the football for so dang long. And if Vandy's doing that, and then you've got your drives where you're going to run the ball and the clock keeps ticking, like I think this is going to be a lower scoring game than a lot of people realize.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that clock is going to stop a whole lot.
No, it's not. It's going to be a quick game. So if you blink, you're going to miss it. But yeah, I mean, you know, for Auburn, their defensive line has to get stops. They have to get off the field on third down. I mean, Vandy, I don't know where they stand in updated rankings, but at one point they were one of the top in the country on third down efficiency and third down conversion.
Yeah. Right.
And it's been a masterclass on third down. And a lot of it is, you know, they have Pavia dead to rights and he flings some like off platform throw to a guy coming across the middle, or he makes two guys miss and he just slides right across the first down line, like stuff like that. Like where if you didn't have Pavia and his natural playmaking ability, you probably don't get half of those first downs at least. And you probably don't beat Alabama. And you probably, because that was the key to Alabama, they just kept the ball away.
Right. Yeah. Third down, they were absolute nails in that game. No question. Yeah. And if they're going to do that on Saturday, like, I mean, that's going to be what they need to do, I think, to win this football game. And I'm not saying they can't do that. I think Auburn's defense, I think, like, there's no way this isn't personal, right? Yeah. Like, after what Pavia did to them a year ago, all of these upperclassmen that were on the team a year ago, which with the transfer portal, it's not as many as you would think, but I mean, he embarrassed them. I've been saying it all week. Like he embarrassed them, and there was nothing they could do to stop him. No. And you know, Hugh Freeze was asked about it earlier this week. Like, is that something where you talk to your team about it? He's like, no, it's a new year. But like, he didn't need to. He didn't need to. These players are either talking amongst themselves about it, or they know in the back of their mind, like, what's at stake here. Mm-hmm. So to me, like, I do think that element of this is super, super crucial. Does that play into the Auburn being a 6.5 point favorite, Corey? I don't know.
It's got to. I mean, between that and the home environment, it's got to, because I can't think of anything else, because Auburn hasn't really shown me anything to be that big a favorite over a team that's playing extremely well at 5-3, looking for their bowl bid. And the resurgence that Vandy's had this year compared to last year. I mean, last year, if this game was at 6.5, I would say something is terribly wrong with Auburn. Right. Because last year's Vandy team, there's no line that should have been under 20. But unless they're playing like Alabama State or something. But it's, you know, again, I was surprised. I thought it was going to be a lot closer given how Vandy's playing. But, you know, some of the losses and stuff, that comes down.
Yep. All right. So we give our official predictions. I got a feeling we're going to disagree. We'll jump into that in just a moment right here on this crossover edition of Locked on Auburn and Locked on Vandy. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. FanDuel's America's #1 sportsbook. We've been talking about the line, Corey, for a big chunk of the show. Auburn -6.5, Vandy +6.5. The over/under 48.5. If you feel confident or passionate about any of these lines, if you feel really good about Vandy winning,
take the under.
Yeah, take the under. I agree with you on that. Take the under 48.5 for sure. But if you feel like, hey, there's no way Auburn wins this game, maybe take the money line for Vanderbilt. That seems like a pretty logical bet if you want to go that way. But hey, right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets. You kidding me, Corey?
That's insane, dude.
Are you kidding me?
I mean, you can't go wrong there, man.
No, you can't. You can't. Get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. That's over at FanDuel.com. Final few moments of this crossover edition of Locked on Auburn and Locked on Vandy. Corey, I think Auburn wins this game. My pick is 27-17. I think Auburn makes a statement on Saturday.
What gets you to that score?
Well, I think they ride Jarquez Hunter. I think Keandre Lambert-Smith or Cam Coleman make a play in the receiving game. And I think the defense is going to step up and slow down Diego Pavia. I think Auburn's going to make an effort to run the clock, win time of possession. And I think if Auburn wins the time of possession, I think they win this game by about 10 points.
Yeah, I'm going to say 2014. Okay, I'm going to say Vandy 2014. It's going to play a lot like the Kentucky game where their defense is very bend but don't break. And I think if you can keep Jarquez under $125, I think you have a really good shot at winning. And I think Vandy's offense is going to be death by 1,000 paper cuts, because as motivated as Auburn is to stop Diego Pavia from hitting 3 in a row,
Sure.
on Hugh Freeze or hitting 2 in a row on Auburn. I think Diego Pavia is just as motivated to not only hit 3 in a row against Hugh Freeze and 2 in a row against Auburn in that building. I think Vandy's got a bowl game at stake, and they see the looming schedule of South Carolina's playing really well. LSU is they're tough out at home for sure, but they're playing somewhat well. And then Tennessee, Tennessee is what they are. So they see this as, hey, we better put all our eggs in this basket, get bowl eligible, and then you're playing with house money after that and see what happens. So I think if they can beat Auburn, I think they can beat South Carolina, and they just need to get back on track a little bit. I think they're going to fix some things in the passing game, but I think it's going to be that lopsided time of possession, and Vandy, that's their advantage.
If Vandy does pull off the lopsided time of possession, they will win the football game. No question about it. One concern that I have from the Auburn point of view is, like, I don't think Hugh Freeze wants to run it a ton. He wants to do the whole RPO thing.
That's problematic.
Yeah. I mean, well, he even like said it at his presser earlier this week where he's like, yeah, it was really hard for me to not throw it. I had to go against my instinct to keep giving it to Jarquez. And it's like, what do you mean?
Like, you got a guy that's crushing a team. Like, I don't.
You have the leading rusher in the SEC.
I don't know why Texas got off the run game. I thought they could have.
Yeah.
I thought they could have blown the game wide open too. But here's my concern with Peyton Thorne throwing the ball. He's super indecisive. And you get an indecisive quarterback that holds the ball. Miles Capers, I believe, is one of the better edge rushers in this conference. He's somebody that can make it happen. And he's somebody he turned over Jalen Milroe. He got a couple of key sacks and an interception against Texas. He's a playmaker. And he's somebody that can really, really wreak havoc. So if Peyton Thorne's going to get back there and be indecisive like he is, that could play into it.
Yeah, no doubt that is a factor. And Vandy's defense is pretty opportunistic when it comes to forcing turnovers. Like, that's a concern. That's another reason why I think Jarquez Hunter needs to get a ton of touches as well, to just kind of limit the opportunity of Vandy possibly getting a pick. So we'll see. Yeah,
now my concern, Zach, not to cut you off, but my concern from the Vandy perspective is, they're not the best at managing the road environment. I thought they got off to a slow start against Kentucky. They got off to a little bit of not really a slow start against Missouri, but I think down the stretch, the road environment kind of got to them. Georgia State was an abomination, but just playing in a different environment where the collection of the team is still not great at that, from logistics to managing the crowd and managing the communication. Yeah. So that's a concern that I have. If they can manage that, I think they'll be just fine. They should be able to manage it because their home games are road games as well, most of them, although the crowd was better against Texas. But
yeah, there seems to be some buy-in for Vanderbilt fans for sure. But this is an Auburn fan base who hasn't had a home game in a month. They didn't play a home game in September because they started off with 5 straight home games, and so then they got a month on the road. So are they going to be eager? It doesn't seem like the fan base is like mailed in the season, despite kind of having a disappointing start. And so,
do they ever though? Like, I feel like Auburn's kind of one of those. Okay.
Yes, it took Brian Harsin to do it, but yes.
Okay.
Yes, fair enough. Yeah, I mean, it's a sellout, and so it seems like there is going to be a lot of buy-in from the fan base. 11:45 kick. That typically doesn't help the home team, but I think the Auburn fan base is gonna.
They'll be juiced.
Be electric, especially with the Diego Pavia storylines. Like, they're going to boo the heck out of him. Corey.
He loves that too. He loves it.
It may help him. True.
Yeah, he loves that kind of stuff. But also, like, the concern I have with Vandy is, with all the blitzing and all the things you have to do to stop Jarquez Hunter with a roster like Vandy's is constructed right now, there's a lot of moving parts. And one guy gets out of place and boom, it's out the gate. I thought they gave up too many gash runs against Texas. And I thought Texas got away from that too soon because they wanted to get Ewers involved in the game and get his confidence up. And I get why they did that. But really, if they would have just ran 70% of the time, they probably would have won 42-7, but they didn't. And so I think that's a concern that I have, that, too much on first down. leads to a little bit of confidence. And the next thing you know, it's like 4 plays and you're in the end zone, and it's all 4 Jarquez Hunter runs. And next thing you know, you're reeling.
Would you say whoever wins time of possession wins the football game?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. Because Vandy, that's what they thrive on. And if they can't get it, they have to try to manufacture it. And when they try to manufacture it, they're not talented enough to be able to play in that type of arena where they're having to manufacture possessions and they're having to score quick because they don't know if they're going to get the ball back. Like usually they're the ones applying that pressure, not getting that pressure.
Corey, for all the Auburn folks watching, if they want to get a peek behind enemy lines and check out your Vandy content, how do they do that?
Well, they go Locked On Vandy on YouTube and Locked On Vandy anywhere you get your podcast, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, wherever it is you consume your podcast, you can find it. It's pretty easy to find at Locked On Vandy on all social media. So it's pretty easy to find. Just come on in, man. Cool. The opposing fan bases have been great in my comments, whether they're talking trash or not. It's been a lot of fun. So come on in.
Yep. And for all the Vandy folks tuning in, check out Locked On Auburn, all the places Corey just listed, wherever you get your podcast. Corey, best of luck on Saturday. Thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn or Locked On Vandy your first listen every single day. For your second listen, go check out our buddy Chris Gordy, host of Locked On SEC. Squad Up. Yeah, the squad show's dropping Thursday afternoon every single week, so be sure to check that out as well. This has been a crossover edition of Locked On Auburn and Locked On Vandy, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.